Welcome back to another episode of Growth Stories. I'm your host, Ben Landers. In today's episode, I'm joined by an old friend, Jon Payne. Jon is a seasoned entrepreneur. He has started a number of different businesses, and he's done something that very few entrepreneurs have done. He has started these businesses and then exited successfully. Jon's original company was a digital marketing company. We were frenemies, kind of friendly competitors. And I really respect Jon and have watched what he's done over the years. He's always on the cutting edge of things. And we spend quite a bit of time talking about how he started his original business and some of the general lessons that apply for all business owners. And then Jon's expertise, one of his areas of expertise is with these platforms and marketplaces like Amazon. And so we spend a little bit of time talking about sort of how that works, how you optimize for these different marketplaces, and whether there's an implication for home services companies and sort of a look at that as it evolves in the future. So go grab a cup of coffee, pen and paper, and enjoy. If you've listened to the show before and you enjoyed it, please give us a like and subscribe. It helps new people find the show. If this is your first time joining, welcome. Hope you enjoy it, and please help me spread the word. Thanks. Jon Payne, the man, the myth, the legend. Welcome to Growth Stories.
Man. Thank you. Good to see you, man. Virtually here, but always good to talk to you.
Yeah, it looks like you've got an office there. Is that new, or have you had that?
No, I do. It's not new. It's we've been in basically the same spot for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, something like that. It's a kind of an office warehouse combo. So we run our e-com operations out of the warehouse, and then little office up front.
Nice. My background is virtual. It's unfortunately I have a very uninspiring real background. It's like a closet. No matter how I set up this room, to keep the light in front of me in the window, basically staring at my closet. So
oh man, well, I apologize for my camera settings here. I'm not any good with that, with lighting. You can see a nice, reflection off of my tiny dome.
You didn't powder your head before?
No, there's no makeup team.
Disappointing.
That's not painfully obvious already.
Well, Jon, for the benefit of the audience, obviously I've known you a long time, but maybe give an intro who you are and sort of what you do.
Yeah. So name is Jon Payne, and from Maryland originally. That's where Ben and I met. And I've been in digital marketing, I guess, for around about 20 years now, which I start to feel really old, saying that. I got out of school, bachelor's degree in 2003. And as I was in school, I was studying marketing and I was studying e-business. I had a dual degree at Towson. This is, again, 2003. This is a couple years, right after kind of dot-com bust. So everybody was feeling like the internet was a fad and going away. I was, kind of bullish on it. Thankfully, I don't know if it was, lack of knowledge or what, but as I'm in school, I started playing around with HTML just kind of for fun, and taught myself how to build, very basic, very ugly websites, and realized I'm not, a designer. But I was pretty good at the marketing side, and I sort of fell into that, accidentally. So that led me into the SEO space, and started an SEO agency called Africon Web Marketing. Ran that for about 10 years, pretty much right after I graduated. Sold it to a larger agency, 2013, 2014 timeframe. And then after that, I got into the Amazon space. So really e-commerce, selling widgets on Amazon. And actually just sold that company middle of last year. So we're filming here early 2023. So this was middle of 2022. So I had a couple different brands. I had a line of like clothing accessories. I had a brand of art supplies, so things like sketch pads and drawing kits and things like that. And so yeah, did that for a number of years. I think, I got into that because one of the guys I used to work with, at the agency that worked for me, he then kind of went in another direction afterwards, and he got into Amazon. And I'd always been, I was, probably, customer number 30 at Amazon or whatever. I'm Netflix customer like number 5. You know? I mean, back when they were mailing the DVDs and stuff too. So a couple of these services I've had for a long time. So I was always a customer of Amazon, but I didn't even realize it was a platform. I didn't even realize that, they started off, they were selling the products. They were, a typical retailer. And then over time, they moved to a third-party model. And so then they just became really a platform. And they still do a little bit of retail, but not much. And, marketplace, just like eBay, right? And so when he told me that, I realized, okay, well, one seller could do better than another seller, right? It's a platform in the same way that Google was, right? Mm-hmm. Google is not the endpoint; it's a starting point. And so if one website does better at marketing itself than another, there's potential profit there. So I realized that Amazon and Google, my background prior had a lot in common, and really for me the most the product world was very different, because when I was running the SEO agency, I was into services and, selling, B2B. And so in the product world, I was selling widgets and it's B2C. So that was very different. I had to learn all about that, and I had to learn about, manufacturing and importing. But what was comfortable for me was that at the end of the day, the way that people were buying was through search. And so in the same way that you would go to Google to look for a roofing contractor, let's say, when someone goes to Amazon, rarely are they browsing around aimlessly. Usually they're using the search feature. So I said, okay, this is still search, and I can figure that out. I know search. I understand this. And some of the details might be different. So yeah, that was kind of the two different businesses that I've had there that were kind of my main, ventures. And as I, look back, I've had a few other projects. I had an affiliate website actually in the home improvement space for a number of years. I don't know if we've ever even talked about that before or not.
I think I came across it one day when I was doing, research on, I think it was back in like the Africon days, I think.
Oh, yeah. It was even, in fact, actually, it was even.
Did you sell that, or were you selling stuff to Home Depot? I don't remember the details. But
yeah. So the site was called All Around the Home, allaroundthehome.com, which is a mouthful. And I never liked the domain, but it was actually a guy came to me really early in my career. It was probably like the 5th or 6th paid project I ever did. And he asked us to build a site for him called All Around the Home. And he was just going to charge people like a fee to run a banner ad. And anyhow, long story short, like we finished the project, but he never launched it. And he sort of ran out of steam and then didn't want to actually do anything with it. So I ended up buying the site back from him, because by that point it had a little bit of, Google juice, right? It had been showing up in the search results for a few things here and there. And it was already built, and there was a platform. And so so we converted it over to a lead gen site. And so we were trying to rank for all sorts of, combinations of keywords like, kitchen remodeling and, Rockville, Maryland or whatever, right? Stuff like that. And first we tried to sign up contractors directly. That was just a lot of work. And so then we figured out that we could sell the leads to a middleman, a lead agency. And we worked with several, kind of like a Service Magic, back in the day. The main one we worked with was a company called Quinn Street, and pretty big, lead provider. And it was, I guess, 2008, 2009. It was right when I moved to Charlotte, that they came to us one day and they basically said, hey, we'd like to buy this site off of you instead of paying you, $15 a lead or whatever every month, we'd like to buy the site off of you. And so at the time it was me, and I had 2 business partners, or my cousins actually. It was kind of a little family project. And it was a side project for us. And, it sounded like a pretty good offer. So we took it. In hindsight, by today's standards, the valuation was quite low. And so I wish I knew then what I know now. But, it's still a good deal for us. So, yeah, but I guess the common theme there between the affiliate site, so that was all about ranking in Google, and then we were selling leads. And then I had an SEO agency, and that was about helping our clients rank in Google, and and then we would sell a service to them, in which we would help their websites rank in Google, right? And then with Amazon, okay, now we're ranking in Amazon search. So it's this common theme of search. And really, as I thought about it and as the years went on, it's even more broad than that. For me, it's inbound marketing. That's really the focus. In fact, the reason I got into it is because, when I was whatever 22, let's say, and I armed with a little bit of HTML knowledge and a copy of Microsoft Front Page. I was trying to sell web design. And I mean, I literally like walked into, I mean, this is funny. I literally just walked into like businesses randomly and was essentially like, hey, your website's ugly. I tried to say it more politely. I'm not very good, but I'm really cheap. And, I can make it, prettier for you and look more, modern. And that's hard sledding. And so, I didn't get very many yeses. I got a whole lot of no's. And honestly, I didn't do it very long before I got, pretty dismayed. And then I tried to cold call people on the phone. I would email people. And that was just tough. And I got very few clients, and the couple that I got weren't really great, small projects, kind of picky, And then one day, this guy from California calls me. He runs he was a lawyer doing like elder care services, right? And he says, hey, I want you to design my website. And I'm like, how did you find me? And he's like, oh, I did a search on like Alta Vista or Northern Light or whatever was the search.
Really,
like
you
Google
mentioned
wasn't even
Microsoft
really
page, and now Alta Vista.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got a fun little front page trick. I'll tell you. As I said, we might be going down too technical a path, but yeah, Google wasn't even the top player, right? It was Yahoo, and then there was like 10 search engines that actually had some sort of share, and Google was starting, to kind of make that. So anyhow, I ended up selling the client over the phone, on kind of a quick phone call, and it was like the biggest project I'd ever worked on, and kind of the light bulb went off for me, like, man, I would much rather pick up the phone and talk to the guy who already wants to talk to me.
Yeah. It's like someone walking into a retail store to buy something versus you going door to door. I mean, it's, it's so easy to be the retail salesperson because their intent is there. They're coming to you. There's a certain sort of like, they want me.
There's intent. There's probably means, right? The fact that they walked into the store, right, means they have the ability to, and then the timing too, right? They're ready now. When they walk into the store, like that's why they're there. Yeah. And so the same thing. I mean, sometimes you can get the right lead at the wrong time. The guy's busy or whatever, But if it's inbound, they're looking now. So yeah, so that was really, huge for me, and it was just much. Yeah, I enjoyed it much more, right? If I'm going to sell something, I don't want to feel like I'm trying to convince somebody or talk somebody into something that they're not wanting to do. I'd much rather be there and be, found on their timeline, with their initiative. And so, yeah, pretty early, I think, thankfully, fell in love with all things inbound marketing. And for me, more specifically, that was search. So
when you go back to, go back to the Efricon days, and having grown the company the way that you did through inbound, did you feel like, when you're getting inquiries from small businesses, I mean, I know you had a lot of home services kind of folks, you had folks from all sorts of industries, but I know you had some home service folks. When those people were coming to you and sort of, interviewing you to potentially be their SEO firm, did you feel like, a certain level of authenticity, or, it's like, I'm doing already. This is, I'm doing already what you want me to do for you. Yeah. I guess talk a little bit about, I've always, I guess where I'm going with this, I've always kind of almost, it's like, it's funny. It can be annoying when someone's inquiring you and, hey, I'm running a $3 million fill in the blank plumbing company and I want to grow it. And you kind of propose to them, this is what you should do. This is where you stand today. This is your goal. This is what you need to spend to get there. And then, sort of sharing like, this is exactly what we do. Yeah. I mean, the same thing that I'm recommending to you. And so there's, some folks it's, can't believe it, or what was your experience with that, I guess?
Oh, it's 100% that. I mean, that was my like number one, like sales tactic, right? Was they were like, well, how do I know that you're going to get my people to find my website? I'm like, aren't you talking to me? They're like, well, I found you online. Well, what'd you do? Well, I went to Google and I typed in SEO agency Baltimore or whatever, I'm like, yeah, let's go do that right now. Look, I'm at the top. You click through, you filled out the form. I've got the tracking here and everything. You filled out the form at this time. Not only did you search on this keyword, this is what landing page you hit. Yeah, I used to love doing that. I had the leads that, came into us mostly via email. Some people call, but, a lot of email results from the form that they would fill out. And we figured out some way fairly early on where we could extract the data from the Google Analytics cookie to pull like the keyword back when, it was a long time ago when Google gave you the keyword and the landing page and all of that. And so as I'm talking to them, I mean, I would ask them this question, but I knew what they did. I knew that they went and they searched on this keyword at this time, clicked to this page, viewed 3 other pages, then filled out the form. And so, yeah, I mean, I would just walk them through that journey. I'm like, look, the same thing that you just did and the fact that you're talking to me right now is exactly what we're going to do for you, except you sell plumbing services or whatever. So yeah, that was totally my number one tactic. For us, and it was true. Basically, all of our business came either from somebody that found us through an organic search or a referral.
Yeah.
From a client who found us from organic search, right? So it ultimately started there. Even the referrals, again, the way that we got the original client who started the referral chain was through that. So, and I'm a little bit fortunate there too, because I don't think that, maybe back then, but I don't think that today that you could necessarily say that, the best SEO agency is the one that ranks the highest, right? Because there's a lot of different things. I mean, somebody could start up a shop at, 6 months or a year ago in the SEO space, which is obviously competitive. And, they're not going to rank real high at the top, but they might do really, really good work, but the website's new, it's not trusted. And, the guy with a, 10, 15, 20-year advantage is going to dominate over that. So I don't know that like it's as direct. But this is, for me and this, right? But general person on the street doesn't really understand, building authority on a website over time and stuff like that. And so,
it's great. It's great to hear you say that, sort of in a context where, in some ways you have no reason to mislead. Where, I think a lot of people selling SEO will explain that it takes time. If you need leads like immediately, you're going to have to go through a paid channel. And it takes time to build up that authority unless you're going to find a way to cheat the system. And, maybe that'll last for a week until you get, busted algorithmically or Google does some update. There is an element to building a brand almost.
Yeah. Absolutely. We would, and again, it was the case, 10, 12 years ago. And it's even more the case, today, that it does take time. First it's people would always say, well, can't you just do the stuff faster? I'm like, well, no, that's not really the time. Yes, it takes us time to actually do the stuff, to write the copy, build the links, all that. But once we do that, it takes Google time to find it. And then even when they find it, built into the algorithm is a time element, right? And it's honestly, it's kind of a safety and security thing from a Google standpoint, because if they immediately adjusted the search results in real time based on immediate inputs, it'd be very prone to manipulation, right?
Yeah.
So now, by contrast, in the Amazon space, which I've more recently been in and actually have gotten back into, Amazon is a closed ecosystem, right? Everything happens within Amazon. The purchase happens on Amazon. Not true with Google, right? Google sends you off to the site. They don't really know what happens after that. So it's not a closed ecosystem. Amazon is. They have perfect data. They know if you bought or you didn't. They know what kind of review you left. They know if you returned the product.
So if there's like a pop-up overnight, kind of cheats their way to the top, sells a bunch of stuff, and people go, I didn't get it, or the product is fake, or it broke the first day, they can punish that.
They can adjust it right away. But I would say that, but to some extent, if somebody pops up really fast because they've been really aggressive, like a lot of times Amazon's okay with that. That's called a hot product, right?
Yeah.
So long as the orders are actually being fulfilled, the reviews are coming back reasonable. And in fact, but see, it's already built in that if it's like the algorithm already has that in place, that if the reviews come back poor, what's going to happen? Well, what's going to happen is now instead of 30% of the people converting, 5% are going to convert. And a conversion rate is a very key metric in the Amazon algorithm. So that listing is going to fall, and they adjust like in days. So that was what was fun for me as an SEO guy, is whereas, Google, okay, we're going to do something on the site, and even kind of a quick change. It's like, all right, we're going to do it, and we're going to check in like 6 weeks.
Yeah.
right? And that would be fast, right? It'd be like, oh, I did this 6 weeks ago, and the thing
Oh, they
adjusted
were,
number
yeah.
8, and now we're number 2, and So with Amazon, we had seen strong evidence of a 5 to 7 day window. So if I were to take a product and spike its sales through whatever method, maybe I over advertise, maybe I discount the product, whatever it is that I do, if I can drive a strong influx of purchases in about a 5, 6, 7 day period, day 8 I'm ranking it's fast. And again, it's because it's a closed, ecosystem. So
This could be a whole separate conversation, probably put the audience to sleep, but I must get a couple Amazon boxes every single day. I mean, I'm constantly ordering stuff through Amazon, and it of course, became more pronounced during the pandemic. But recently, I ordered bike chains, right? So I have a bunch of bikes, mountain bikes, road bikes, and I ordered some bike chains. Shimano, that's a major manufacturer, bike chains. I didn't get them at some super cheap rate. I paid what I thought was about reasonable kind of retail. And I get the chains. Well, to size the chain, you like if you already have a chain on the bike, you take the old chain off, lay it on a table, or count the links, and then you take the new chain and you have to size it. You remove a couple links, match it to the old chain, and then put it on the bike. Easy.
yeah, sounds reasonable.
And so I'm doing that. And I'm noticing that on the new chain, there's markings or stamps that are not on the existing chain, like giant SK on every link, which I'm thinking, what is that about? And then I look at the actual box and it's almost identical, but it's a little bit different. Some of the letters are a little bit further apart. There's a couple typos, not in the English stuff, but in the where it says in French, this is a product made Japan, it has the name of the company. Shimano is spelled wrong. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this thing is a fake. So I call a bike shop buddy and I say, hey, I ordered this because no one locally had it in stock, or I would have got it from a local bike shop. And he says, oh, that's a huge issue. So it's thinking, all right, I won't order chains and stuff. You don't want your chain to break on a bike. You can just kind of imagine what happens. So then recently I ordered Oakleys. I ordered like sports, sunglasses. And again, I get them. I paid $200. I mean, they're like normal, overpriced, Oakleys.
Yeah.
I get them out of the box.
Fake Oakleys, the Folkleys we used to call them.
Well, I get them out of the box. And again, I already have an existing pair. And so I'm looking and they're identical. But the difference is when you go to put them on, there's a pronounced creak. And you can tell that, one of the things that makes like Ray-Bans and Oakley's expensive is they use a better plastic that's more malleable as opposed to the cheap plastic where you open up and it just pop, it cracks. And so then I start looking I didn't look at the reviews because most of them were 4 and 5 star. But I start looking and actually reading the 2-in-1s, and it's like, oh, the ones that I got, I think are fake. And so is that just proliferating on?
It is. It is a problem. And so, one of the things I, do now, so the, business number 1 there is the agency side. Business number 2 is my own product. So we sell our own products on Amazon, and then we help other companies sell on Amazon, right? So if I were consulting one of these companies about this, right, I would say, first of all, it is a problem, but there are also solutions and tools. Unfortunately, there's not much on the consumer end that you can do unless I really teach you about all the details of Amazon, which you're not going to be interested in knowing, right? But at the brand end, there are things that they can do. Basically, first off, on Amazon, you've got 2 different things. You've got like the product, and then you've got the seller, right? And so you could have a product which could be, Oakley, whatever model, XYZ123.
That you're buying from some random seller as opposed to like the official Oakley store.
And it could, so it could be Oakley could sell them themselves, right? But at the same point, Sunglasses Hut could also sell them, right? And so could, Joe Smith in Podunk, Iowa, or whatever, right? Now, Joe Smith in Podunk, Iowa might actually have legitimate, product. But he might not. And so, when you have a big brand that sells a lot, there's a temptation for someone to come in and sell the fake product because it's kind of like, in the website world, like if I could hack your site and put my own form on your site. Like your site's already ranking. And so the Oakley listing in Amazon for that product is already ranking and it already has lots of reviews.
So by adding yourself as another option for where you can buy it from, some percentage of people go, I can get this on Tuesday from Joe.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, Oakley can't get it to me for, till fill in the blank.
And so there's two different ranking aspects in Amazon. So the main one is how to get that Oakley page to rank over, like Oakley's probably not gonna have that many trouble, but whatever, some other brand of sunglasses, Ray-Ban or something. Yeah. I don't know what sunglasses, So how to get the one page versus the other, right? Okay, but both of those are going to sell a lot of sunglasses, and then some guy's got his own random XYZ brand, and they're going to sell much less. So that's one thing. But then once the page is ranking, there's this second criteria of which seller on the page sells these. And so if you go to Amazon, certainly on the desktop, you can usually see where it says like, and 3 other offers or 3 other sellers. It's like small print. It's kind of buried. They don't really want you to see it. But basically, in that case, there might be 5, 10, 15 different sellers that are all selling the same sunglasses. And so some of them might be legit and some of them might not. Now, unfortunately, in that case, the review is left on the product page. Well, the product is legit. The bad review shouldn't be on the product. It should be for the seller, right? But, Amazon's not perfect, and that's an issue. So what the brand could do is a couple of things. One, they should sort of be monitoring this, right? Particularly if you're like Oakley or something, right? You should be monitoring this. They should know all the sellers on their listing. They should verify that it's, that they're getting it through legitimate channels. But then 2 is particularly a good option if it's like a mostly online brand or a smaller brand, is they have a program called Transparency, which is essentially you get these, I don't know what 2D barcodes or whatever, right? So it's like looks like a QR code, and it's a different sticker. They put it on every unit, and actually, whereas a barcode, if I have 1,000 units, they all have the same barcode. Well, with these, it's 1,000 different codes. Every single code is unique.
So you can scan it and validate that it's an actual authentic fill in the
blank. So Amazon provides the codes to the manufacturer, to the brand, and then the brand puts them on. And so when you send the product into the Amazon fulfillment center to enter their distribution system, it compares it against the list that they provided you, and it knows if it's authentic or not. So that is, and we had a problem. I mean, shoot, my brands were, no Oakley in terms of reach or anything, but I had a problem with that. I had a problem where people were trying to sell fake comfy clothiers collar extenders. And so we had to do that. And, it means I had to pay Amazon 5 cents a unit for the code, another 2 or 3 cents a unit for the sticker. And then I had to pay labor to put stickers on lots of products. But it worked. It shut it down. So there are solutions. And this is kind of like, this is kind of the case with all things Amazon. There are solutions. And in fact, they're very good solutions, but, they cost more money. They take more time. And they take a few years before they come around to making them, usually in response to pressure from Congress. That's when they roll features.
So, I guess, a lot of I think we have some in the audience, obviously, that will have products, selling products. And there's probably the question of, do I want to sell on Amazon or directly through my website and all the different platforms? But I've often wondered, I think there was some writing in the business journals about Amazon entering the home services space. And I thought it was sort of tied to, I got to say this quietly or my Alexa will, come on and start listening to me. But, where it's like you just ask the virtual assistant, to get you the plumber or get you the roofer or whatever. Do you have any insight into Amazon's direction with that? Do you see that as kind of that's where things ultimately will go, where Amazon's a platform not just for the products, but also for all the services? And it almost seemed like they were going down that path. And I think I might have been around the time that I bought Amazon stock, because I remember thinking between AWS and then this disruption, it's like the typical, retail purchaser of the stock probably is not even thinking about these things. But
for me, and just a quick side note, for me, it's the advertising platform. Obviously AWS is already a huge beast, but the advertising platform, if you look at how that grows, it's nuts. And so they're basically Google, right? As more people bid, the cost per click goes up. And then at the same point, they also add more ads to the page to where eventually there's not any organic, to do. So anyhow, that's an aside. As far as Amazon's,
Like, do you think they'll get into the service and be a platform for services, or where do you see that going?
I mean, like to some extent, I mean, who knows? My gut is no. Because, and it's not that they don't want to, I think they tried. I first heard about that several years ago, right?
Yeah.
Have you hired a home, I hope not for you, but I have not hired a home improvement contractor through that. I want to have a little more interaction. And this honestly is like kind of a microcosm of product versus service in general, right? A widget, I don't need to speak to anybody. You just ship it out here. It's going to show up at this price at this time, and I can see the specs on it. A service is a little different, right? I kind of want to talk to somebody. The price isn't a given, right? I can get multiple quotes, different pricing. I'm also going to evaluate, how easy was the company to get a hold of and all these types of things. So I think specifically within the home services space, I would not, my money would not be on Amazon making a big, strong play there. It also, their competitive advantage, or at least one of their competitive advantages, is distribution. And so, they've got that, and that's a thing that, you have to have physical infrastructure for products. You got to have a place to put them. You got to have people.
The more they can layer on that, the more profit, as opposed to something where there isn't a moat like that.
Which is why they got away from just selling retail, where they had to sink all the cash into it, right? And so now they still operate the warehouses, but instead, fools like me buy the product ahead of time, send it to Amazon. Amazon doesn't pay for it. I pay to send it in. I pay for them to store it. And then when someone buys it, I pay them a commission to ship it out. And then I pay the fee for the fulfillment. And oh, by the way, to get them to buy it in the first place, I'm also paying for advertising. So, and a monthly fee as well. And if I want to get my money relatively quickly, again, there's fees for that too. So
Bezos, genius, unbelievable.
Oh yeah, well they're a huge behemoth. Back to stocks. That's where so for me, Shopify is the play, because they're the only other player that I see that can do that. I think it's like there's what they are now, and then there's all these other things they can layer on, from payment processing to to distribution, which is why they bought that 3PL Deliver, to all the next things, right? So anyhow, yeah, I guess that's a very long-winded way of saying I just don't see that as being Amazon's strength. And I also it's a little more hands-on, and they're not good with that. They're really good with automation, and they're not good with like someone has a problem or you need to call somebody back or whatever. I mean, ask anyone that's a seller on Amazon. The seller support on Amazon is like the worst thing ever. Which is why, I mean, honestly, half the reason why agencies and consultants in that space exist is because of that.
Right.
Yeah.
What about I think there's some folks that think, and I know this isn't necessarily your your core area of expertise, but I'm just more looking for sort of your opinion on this, which is, I would imagine that the average, John Doe didn't realize how much sort of gamification you can do within Amazon as a platform if you're a seller, how much you can, like the rankings and everything that you're talking about. Just the same as my mom, when we started Blue Corona, it was like, oh, we can get websites to rank higher. It's like, oh, come on, Google's this huge entity. How could some company in Gaithersburg have any, sway over anything? But there are a lot of platforms, these marketplaces, whether it's, Angie or Home Advisor, or Neighborly. I guess Neighborly's a company, but Nextdoor. Okay. And I think there's probably an assumption for many people that, the fields are fixed. It's like, where you enter in your business name, you enter in 3 pictures, you put in your hours, a little description, and sort of the feeling that there's not a whole lot that you can do to influence. It's like a fixed, and that's why, my website, I need a website because that's where I can go wild with, SEO and videos and testimonials. Do you have that perspective, or are you more of the every platform has ways that you can optimize it, not necessarily just for the ranking, but for click-throughs or whatever? What's your stance?
I mean, I think both. I think yes, they're both true, right? So I mean, there are fewer things on Amazon. I mean, the whole thing is it's standardized, right? I mean, your website, you start with a blank, blank file, a blank page. You can make it do or say whatever you want. You can present it in however you want to present it. And Amazon does not want that. They want each product page to look similar. So that way it's easy for people to compare A to B, right? So they all have the same, there's not one page that has reviews on a 10-point scale and another page that has them on a 5-point scale. They're all on a 5-point scale, right? They all show the same number of, of preview reviews before you click in deeper to see the other ones, right? So they purposely want that, right? They all have the same, you have the same number of images, although that actually changes a bit based on category, but it's still applicable one product to the next. So I think, yeah, I mean, they purposely want that. And I don't think that's just an Amazon thing. I think that's true for anything, right? So a new business I'm starting up is half business, half investment. Number 3 there is the short-term rental space. So Airbnb, and Vrbo, those are the platforms. And same thing, right? They want to make sure that it's easy for the user so that there's a consistent experience with them as the platform. So that is to say, there are intentionally much fewer things that you can optimize, and that's true. And so, I agree with that. Also, though, there's less you have to optimize, right? There's less you have to do. So in a lot of ways, it can be maybe a little less involved. And I told you, before with Amazon, I said, it can be faster, because of that, because there's not this trust issue, that there needs to be with, with Google. On these closed loop platforms, they control more of the factors. So the whole thing can adjust more quickly. So, yeah, I mean, I think with any platform, there probably is less to optimize. It doesn't mean that there's not anything to optimize. I mean, there absolutely is. That's what we do. That's what I've done, with growing our brands. And the question is what? And then the question is, how much can you do? How easy is it? And how much opportunity is there, right? So, I'll pop off of Amazon for a second. We'll talk about Airbnb. If I'm getting into an Airbnb market and I do a search in the area and I'm looking for a, 3-bedroom, 2-bath and, again, Podunk, Iowa, and I see a whole bunch of really great listings. Wow, the photography is great. And they got a pool and they got this and they got a game room and they got all these things. And, it's a really affordable price. As an investor, that's a tough, I don't really want to be in that market, right? Because how can I improve? The market to be in is where someone has, the top ranking result has poor photos, something they took with their iPhone, it's kind of dimly lit, they haven't really done much. The house isn't really updated, the carpet looks a little grungy, and yet you can still see that they're booking 70-80% occupancy and they're booking at, whatever, an attractive rate. And so if the numbers work out with an ugly house, you come in, you make it look nice, you take good photography, right? You work on the description, you respond to people quickly when they have questions before booking the property, and you can really add value. And again, same thing with Amazon. Although, that is all to say today, it's much different than it was, many years ago. And, again, we're speaking about Amazon and we're speaking about Airbnb just because that's kind of my, experience, but the same things apply to basically any platform, right? And so, and maybe your timing is different, right? So if whatever is the next, big home improvement platform or, whether it's a Nextdoor or something, if you can get in early, yeah, you can get that early mover advantage. You can start building your reviews, and you can take advantage of that. If you're coming in late, it's going to be harder. The advantage is when you're coming in late, that you picked the right platform. Right. So there's nobody nowadays that's like, oh, I'm not sure if Amazon is a good, it has enough sales volume. Right. Have like 65% of e-commerce sales in the United States. Like, it's ridiculous, So that's not the question. The question is it, can I make a profit? Are the fees too high? Can I compete? And so, yeah, so I guess that's my thinking. It's more of a matter of what can you change, and how easy or difficult is it?
Go back for 1 second. I think I mentioned this to you in a previous conversation or in an email. It's more of a personal curiosity. So you started Efforcon and then went back and got your MBA. Was that sort of the timing on things?
Yes, yeah. So Africa.
So yeah, the question is like, what did anything change where you graduate with the e-business kind of business degree, you start Africon, at some point you say, I'm going to go back and get my MBA. So I guess, question is like, what was the gap where you said, I want to do this, or was it just an intellectual curiosity? And then once you got it, kind of what, if any, kind of holes did that fill? What did you change based on, I think most of the people listening are people that have bootstrapped a business, probably don't have an MBA from a school like, where you went. And so, just curious there.
Yeah. So, okay. So I started the company 2003 about, it's basically working from home, one man show, kind of doing everything for the first year and a half. And I just kind of got burnt out, honestly, like working by myself, working from home. And I found I saw a job ad, and I actually took a job. I've had one in my adult life, one real job for basically about 3 months. So I took a job as an in-house like SEO guy with a company called Tesco Technologies in like the Towson area, and wonderful company, great people. I'm not a good employee. It's not for me. And but anyhow, part of the reason why I did that is because we had just had my daughter, and I was thinking that I wanted to my first child, and we were thinking that I was like, I wasn't convinced that my agency, like, I don't even want to say it was going to survive. I hadn't yet gotten to the point where I was actually growing it. I was really just a dude for hire, right? For a year and a half.
You built a job versus a company.
And so I could take this job. And meanwhile, I was like, I think I can still keep about half of my consulting clients. And so if I add the salary of the job and half of my consulting clients, I'm going to make more money. And then at the same point, the job was going to reimburse for the MBA, and was going to I just felt like it would be like easier to manage, like if all my income was tied to clients, I was going to have a tough time sitting down to study for a test. Mm-hmm. Whereas I felt like if I had the job, I could leave it, and I could study and whatever. So that was kind of my thinking. I mean, in actuality, I was only at the company for a few months, and then I went to working kind of like, part-time for them in a couple of months. And then eventually they became a client of my agency. And actually they stayed a client for like 3 years or something before they hired somebody else for that in-house position. And so for me, the MBA, to be honest, was more, it was more a security blanket for myself because, look, at this point, I'm a young guy. I didn't have much money in the bank. And I just wanted to kind of know that, like, whatever, I had some sort of backup plan. I was like, okay, I've got the MBA. I can always go get a job as a, whatever, GM somewhere, VP of this or whatever, something. I just felt like I was taking like my floor, like my worst case scenario of, if I'm incompetent and everything else doesn't work out or whatever in terms of in business, then my worst case scenario was going to be a little better. Yeah. It's like my worst case scenario of getting a traditional job would go from here, to here, at least financially. Mm-hmm. So that was honestly, that was really the main reason why I did it. Looking back, I think, some of the benefits associated with that, probably had a little more confidence. I had a little less maybe fear and anxiety because I felt like the worst case was a little better. I think I got a little stronger with just speaking the lingo of business, I just felt a little more comfortable, a little more confident. And I was a business major undergrad, so it's not like I was, ignorant of a profit and loss statement or something like that, right? But I just felt a little stronger with that. I had a little better command of that. I made some connections. So my MBA was at Loyola, sold them as a client. So they were a client for a couple of years afterwards. So I ended up getting basically my back, that's a very proud, for me. Awesome. No, I really appreciate it. I think I really had a good experience, but for me as a entrepreneur, where it really had no bearing on I don't think anybody really hired me because of that. And certainly I wasn't applying to jobs. For me, it was more of like a personal development kind of thing. Yeah. Now I wouldn't jump to recommend that to an entrepreneur, unless they have kind of the same insecurities maybe that I had.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard very similar. I mean, I feel like, I took a fair number of business courses undergrad, but I really didn't feel like I applied any of it. When I went to work for Bob Perini originally, and then when Bob became my business partner in Blue Corona, I kind of feel like he gave me a practical MBA, and in
Yeah,
one sense, it was all much simpler. There were a handful
yeah,
of concepts that were a little bit counterintuitive, but it's not like you needed, you know, uh, some complex statistics course, or, I mean, one of the business schools I remember looked at, you had to have calculus, just to get in. And
yeah. I don't think that makes sense. I don't think that makes
I,
sense at all.
yeah,
In
I
fact,
never understood.
just to expand on that, I don't think most kids in high school should be taking calculus. I think they should be taking a basic financial management. I think they should learn not just personal finance, but learn how to read an income statement, understand the difference between an asset and a liability. I think that does apply or should apply, and if it doesn't apply, it should apply to basically everyone's life.
Yeah.
And I don't think that whatever calculate, I don't even know, calculating the magnitude of the sine wave.
Multivariable calculus, that doesn't, you don't use that every day to.
If that's your your thing, like awesome, go for it, right? I mean, you want to be in that space, but for business, I don't.
John, I remember we had a guy who remained nameless who, was sort of a data analyst type, really analytical guy, super smart. I mean, objectively, very smart. And I remember we had, our 401k person come in and sort of walk everyone through. We had mostly at that time younger employees, and sort of walk them through how much they need to be saving, compound interest, and it's almost like the penny a day doubled. Which would you rather have? And
Yeah. Oh, I did that example with my kids a few months ago. It's
yeah, and
amazing.
this otherwise like really smart guy pulls me aside afterwards and was like, "Man, I'm like really embarrassed. Like I'm not signed up for the 401k. I read the company match, but I didn't even like appreciate, the generosity behind this or what it would do, the benefit of it. And I don't save anything. And again, he might have been like in his late, he was older then, he wasn't like right out of college. I mean, he would been working for a while. And I remember thinking like, man, if I've got one thing right, my very first job, I maxed out the 401k, saved my entire paycheck, kind of lived on my commission checks. And
Yeah.
or maybe it was vice versa. I lived on my base, which was peanuts, and I banked my commission checks. And so anyway, it is amazing how it's scary, because we're probably going to be bailing all those folks out when they're retiring and have zippy and
I think
bank
it's a big
Social
problem. I
Security.
think it's a problem with, people individually, managing their own selves and their families. I think it probably trickles through to how we manage, budgets as a city, a state, a country. I think it's a big problem. And so, and to me, that's huge. I mean, look, almost any job you're going to get, you're in some sort of a business. A business needs to, to make a profit, or at least break even to be able to pay everybody. You should understand these things. You should understand, revenue and expenses. You should understand an asset versus a liability. And these are very, practical kind of basic things. And so that for me, I think, the business, whether it's business administration degree was my undergrad, or, an MBA, the financial piece, I think, is very helpful. It's very good and is very applicable. And I would also say, I think most, if not all, of my marketing classes. Now I'm in marketing, right? But I think that they were all also very useful. There's some classes that a little less so, right? So for me, just kind of last notes, I guess, on the MBA. It's a very corporate degree, like it's designed for that. And I think business degrees in general maybe skew that way, like so even bachelor's, but certainly the MBA. So, I mean, I was in Baltimore, and I'm in the class, and I'm like the one entrepreneur, right? And if there's, 20 other people in a class, right? 10 of them were at T. Rowe Price, right?
Legg Mason.
Were at Legg Mason. A couple were at, whatever other bank. I mean, they were all like, 80% were bankers, okay?
Yeah.
And large bankers. And, that's great, but that's what it was. And I was the one like small business guy, you know? And so as a small business guy, you gotta kind of see a whole lot of stuff. In a larger corporate setting, you typically have a more, specific.
Well, that brings up one thing that I've said this to clients, and I've sort of preached this wherever I can, and not everyone agrees with it, but I will beat this drum until I'm not doing this anymore. But there are things that I learned in marketing classes. I think we did a case study once, and it was like Joseph A. Banks or one of these companies where they're like a mega discount. Like if you go into Joseph A. Banks and you buy the shirts at full retail, literally just like have a giant sign on your head that just says, Mark or Sucker or whatever.
You're a fool.
And so I remember I was talking to, I think it was like an HVAC company or a remodeling company. It was a business that was seasonal, and they were saying, look, I don't need your help. Like June in the Mid-Atlantic. I mean, we'll take 2,000 calls, in a week.
Company, the first hot week is going to be,
I need you like in these shoulder seasons when everyone has their windows open and they're sleeping with no air conditioning on and they haven't turned the heat on yet. And one of the comments that I had was, I was like, I see your guys, I'd see their trucks and see the guys at like a local Burger King, like smoking cigarettes in the parking lot. It's like, they're big enough that they're keeping guys on the payroll. They're not laying the guys off in the shoulder season. So it's like you have this capacity and it's just sitting there. Like, why don't you take an email blast to all the people that had inquired about a new system but didn't pull the trigger and offer like a crazy discount if they do it within this window. And they said, they had like a marketing guy, and the marketing guy's like, we're not doing that. And I'll tell you why we're not doing it. We're not going to become the Joseph A. Banks of HVAC. And I was like, I understand within like a business school case study, if you have Brooks Brothers and you have Joseph A. Banks, Brooks Brothers doesn't want to become known as like, I'll just wait till this $2,000 suit goes on sale. But you're like Joe's Heating and Cooling and I'm making this up. But hopefully if you are Joe's, this isn't about you. But you're in like, Rockville. You wish that my parents are sitting there going like, I can't wait for Joe's to have their annual furnace sale, or whatever, because that's when I'm going to pounce.
They don't know. They don't even remember Joe. I'm sorry, Joe. They don't remember you, right? No. And so when you contact them and say, hey, remember that quote we gave you a while back? And we're like, oh yeah, and after like 20% off. Okay, 40% off. Yeah. No, I'm with you. And I think the larger point there is, again, I think because, like I said about a lot of the degrees in school skewing corporate, I think that a lot of times, a lot of the business advice skews corporate and skews large, right? And so, I think that, Brooks Brothers needs to worry about their brand, right? That's like the only reason why, whatever, they're making sales, right? And somebody's going to say, oh, they make really good quality stuff. So do 10 other companies, right? And so at that level, yes, but that's not the level of Joe's, heating and air conditioning. And so it's a little different. And honestly, like for me, I mean, I'll be the first to say, in the Amazon space, the e-commerce space and whatnot, everybody talks about building a brand for their product, right? And, you have to kind of flesh that out. What do you really mean? Do you mean that you have a logo and a name? I mean, everyone has a logo and a name. Do you mean you have a nice looking website? Do you mean you have a strong, loyal customer following? Do you mean you've got a reputation, where people are going to refer you over? Like, what do you actually mean with that? And to be quite frank, particularly within a marketplace, I think that that's actually overrated. And look, I'm a marketing guy who, owns a number of brands right now. But I think we can overestimate that. A lot of times, when someone's buying on Amazon, and again, same thing on somewhere else, it's like, okay, does this look to be a legitimate product or company? Does it seem to be of good quality? Is it at a reasonable price? Am I going to get it relatively quickly? And that's for most widgets that you buy, that's fine. Now, look, the Oakley sunglasses, Oakley has a brand, okay? And so that's a little different, right? But, go find me whatever coasters are on the table that's not really behind you right now. And before you do that, tell me what brand of coasters they are.
Right.
You don't know. Whatever, they looked nice. They were in the right store. It seemed like an okay price. And so, you went for it. Like whatever scissors these are right here. I don't know what they are. They didn't even say what brand they are. But whatever, it was fine.
In that case, like being found is the initial hurdle, right? You can
Yeah.
worry about building the brand or let the brand kind of build organically.
And I don't want to follow whatever the company is that makes the scissors. I don't want to get emails from them. I don't want to have all this engagement, I don't want to watch their TikTok videos of whatever they're doing. I guess I could get a little bit morbid if we're pressing too far with that. So yeah, I mean, I think that can be overrated in the small business space sometimes. In fact,
I see that with the guys that they're just starting out and they go mega big, they get like a high flash website, they get the full truck wraps, that cost a ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah.
And then maybe are skimping on, they got one person answering the phone.
Yeah.
So the lines are backing up, or they're not answering on time, or they can't get there quickly enough, but they got
and
the
how many people are
trucks
pushing the website, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the exact opposite way I think that you should do it. Because if you have all the flashy website and the fancy truck, but nobody comes to the website.
Right.
And the truck doesn't go anywhere because it doesn't have any appointments, so nobody sees it.
Right.
It's wasteful, right? It doesn't make any sense. Do it the other way, right? And people are worried as though like, oh, well, if I start off and my website's kind of boring, and like 3 years from now, some guy's going to not buy from me because he remembers how my website was ugly back. No, he doesn't.
No.
He's worried about his own self and his own problems. He doesn't. And you know what? He didn't visit your website back then anyways.
Exactly.
So just get started. I think for me, I think that a small business, a new business, whatever, we're talking about a couple few $1,000,000 a year, and it's all about leads and sales. You've got to start with that. You've got to get eyeballs. You've got to get sales, and then over time, I think then you start to put time and attention into all those other things. But those other things, it's the classic example with website marketing, right? Of like, what's more important, or what's more, traffic or conversion rate, right? And I say, well, if I have a lot of traffic but a tiny conversion rate, I can improve the conversion rate, and I'll know if I improved it because I have a lot of traffic and I can test it quickly.
Right.
But if I have a great conversion rate but I have no traffic, I don't even know that I have a great conversion rate.
Right.
I'm never going to see anything.
Right.
You got to start with, hopefully you can get a little bit of both, but if you have to favor on one, I think you err towards, selling. So just, on your AC example, I got the warehouse that we have out here. It's a small warehouse. It's the whole suite here is like 3,000 square feet. So it's probably like 2,000 for the warehouse or something. But it's tall ceilings, 23 feet high or whatever. So we can go three pallets up. And I had to get an AC in it because it didn't have an AC. And so I got it quoted at whatever point, kind of early summer one year, 13,000, I think it was going to cost me. Right. And then I ended up getting it put in probably like, whenever COVID hit. I think I got it like 2 weeks later, like April or, of whatever it was, 2020, 8,000. Right. So, it's $5,000, I mean, it was a legitimate, and that's what it was. I don't remember if I reached out to them or if they reached back out to me. It's a better story if I tell you that they reached back out to me. So let's just go with that. But yeah, we got the job done,
I'm kind of jumping all over the place. This is a non sequitur, but I keep looking at Active Rest. I keep looking at the logo that's kind of 3 down on your wall there. Are you in that business? You're acquiring the properties and sort of optimizing the platforms to get them kind of rented out or win that way? Or is that also a service where you're doing consulting for people with short-term rentals and helping them rank, or
great question. So in full transparency, the businesses are sort of in order of the level that they're established. This is, we just have spun this up and we're just getting started in this. So we have right now a couple of things that we do. We actually have a food truck that we rent out, that we own and rent out. But mainly what we're looking to do, and say looking because we're really just getting this started up right now, is acquiring properties of our own, and then managing those. And then now probably what we will do at some point in the future is, as we lay the infrastructure to manage our own, properties, there may be some additional capacity there, right? So I need somebody, for instance, I need somebody to man the phone 24 hours a day. Because if a guest checks in and there's a problem, like somebody needs to answer the phone, and they need it to not be me. So I need somebody to man the phone 24 hours a day, but whoever's manning the phone 24 hours a day isn't going to constantly be on the phone, right? Very rarely are they going to be on the phone. They can probably handle 10 times whatever the volume is of whatever we would have, right? So the plan is, as we build up our own, properties, to then, kind of fill in, the excess capacity that we have, through property management, or specifically within the Airbnb space, you would call it co-hosting. So yeah, I mean, as we are right now, this is something that it's a business this is, for me, it's like half business, half investment.
Well, I was going to say, when you were talking through the markets and where, what would be attractive and what wouldn't, I kept picturing you buying these properties in like the most uncompetitive, marketplaces, and then thinking like, do you really want to be stuck like, owning those? Like, are you finding like, I wouldn't mind going there, and the top ranking one is kind of crappy?
Yeah, I mean, it's got to, so it's still got to be like, it's got to meet certain check boxes, right? So there's got to be people going there. If there aren't people going to that area, it's not going to work. Now, what's really cool is, and again, I see so many similarities, one platform to the next. So on Amazon, we have some tools that can estimate what a given product sells. Okay. And basically what they do, the gist of this is that Amazon publishes a BSR rank, a bestseller rank. And so if your BSR is number 32 in the category, it means you're the 32 highest seller, right? There's 31 products that sell more than you, on an average daily value, right? So if I knew what the 30th product was, and I knew what the 35th product sold, I could estimate, what the 32nd product sold, right? And so these tools go out there, they get a bunch of data points. And so they have a lot of points that they actually know, because they can tie into different accounts and stuff. And then they can make projections about the other ones. And so they can tell you, hey, we think, this, blue widget sells about 2,000 units a month. And so because of that, we would take that data, and then I would run the financials. Okay, what can I buy it for? What are my costs? What am I going to sell it for? How much profit am I going to make? And if I could make a good profit and it was a reasonable volume that I was happy with, then we might move forward with that product, right? And so it's the same thing for Airbnb. There's tools that provide estimates on that. Now, what they do is, at least to the best of my understanding, basically they visit the Airbnb page every day for each listing, and they check the calendar, and you can see which days are booked out and which days aren't. And you map that, right? And then you check again the next day, and you check again the next day, and you compare, and you see which days end up getting, booked out. And okay, this place is booked for those days. Now, you're not sure if, did the owner
change the availability versus,
Generally speaking, when we're talking about particularly when we're talking about like larger professional operations and stuff, like that's very minimal. But regardless, you can put in, an estimate for that. So we have an idea of what properties do in terms of revenue. So for me, it doesn't make any, if I didn't have that, there's no way that I'm going to Podunk, Iowa and taking a gamble, right? But if I can, honestly, it's kind of like search. In fact, maybe this will be the best analogy for you. Would you rather be, on page 3 of the search results for a keyword that has, 1,000 searches a month, or would you rather be number 1 for a keyword that has, 100 searches a month?
Right.
And the answer is number 1 for a keyword that has 100 searches a month, because you're going to get like 40 or 50% of the traffic, right? Whereas page 3, like nobody ever goes there. You're going to get 0.01%. And so it's the same thing here. So, look, a lot of people go to, whatever town, get a place, by Disney. There's a lot of people going there. You can get a place in the Smoky Mountains. There's a lot of people going there. Get a place on, the beach somewhere in the summer. There's a lot of people going there. Pick your city or whatever, but you've also got to consider how many competitors are there, right? So maybe being number 1 out of 5 in a smaller town that gets, it's more like how much supply is there compared to the demand. And so there might only be 5 Airbnbs, but maybe that's not enough for this one area. Whereas in another city, they might have way more than they need. So yeah, it's just looking at those things. And then also in comparison to what the purchase price is, right? So what are my costs? What's the potential revenue out there? How much competition is there? And you got to find the sweet spot of all of those. And I think the reason why there's an attractiveness about a smaller town, and again, I don't mean like zero. I mean, they need to have something going on.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason why there's an attractiveness is, quite frankly, because everyone thinks of the big vacation spots and the larger towns. And because everyone thinks of that, there's more competition. And because there's more competition, they get better photography and they do a better job with things. And there's just more professional organization. And eventually, I think that'll trickle down, elsewhere. But right now, there's an opportunity. Again, same thing on Amazon. If you try and go sell, iPhone cases or something like that, like it's going to be tough. Like whoever's ranking top there, they're not making much margin. They have really good photos and video. They have a lot of reviews. It's established. If you can find a product that is, doesn't sell as much as that, but is more niche and more, off the wall, you can do better. Now, Amazon's developed enough that even those are kind of hard, but that's why I started. Our first product was a collar extender, right? So it would, if you're wearing a dress shirt and you got your tie here, it was basically like a piece of elastic.
I needed that. I needed that between 2010 and like 16, and then I needed it again.
Yeah.
So
look, they weren't, it wasn't a huge market, but we were number one. We were the top ranking one. And then eventually what we said is, when we were number one, could we be number one and number two? So we launched another, another version, right? You got a 3-pack, you got a 5-pack, you got, different colors. And again, similar story, for Google, right? So, can you, it's like going after the long tail, right? Okay, yes, there's less traffic for a given long tail word. But if you go after many of them, it adds up. And if you rank number one, you get a large share of that traffic. And not only that, but it converts really well. And so same thing, like if I'm in Podunk, Iowa, and I've got like this amazing place, and then the other 4 are beat, like we're going to get the conversion, we're going to get the sale. Whereas if I'm in a larger city, man, there's a lot of options, and people are going to look at a lot of different things, and it starts to get to be competitive, So yeah.
How do you sort of wrap up on this, which is, you have a lot of, again, you have three kind of businesses, some of them being newer. I get the sense that you're much more of the find the opportunity, become the expert in something, and then sort of build out the infrastructure to kind of run it. Like you said, you don't want to be you're not going to be the one manning the phones for, for active rest. Is that accurate? And how do you keep it all straight? I mean, how do you spend your days when you come into that office? Are you just all over the place? And is that by design?
Yes, I'm all over the place. No, it's not by design. It's by personality. So for me, the third one, for active rest, the headspace that I'm in is that is sort of investment, half business, right? So part of the play there, you get somebody checking in, they're there for 3-4 days, 5 days, they check out. In a lot of cases, you don't have to have a lot of communication, right? Everything's automated. They've got a code they plug into the lock. You've got automated emails going out, so you can kind of make it real efficient. Every once in a while, they'll want to talk to somebody, so you need to be available. But I would say that really, like that, it's not so much the service that they're buying. It's the product, right? It's what place do you have, what furniture do you have, what design, what amenities, and where is it located. And so that, I think, is a relatively easy business to automate. The hardest part is scheduling cleaners and stuff. But even that, like you can do it. Like there's software tools and yeah. So for me, that I kind of put in a different bucket. I sort of view that as like my investment path, and that's what I want to grow for many years. That I plan to just hold on to all that stuff forever, right? Most likely, although there's a potential for other stuff. But the other two, I mean, they're related. So Illuminated Goods, we're selling widgets on Amazon, and then Vocational Media, we're helping companies sell widgets on Amazon. So it's two different, legal entities, but at the end of the day, what we're doing is relatively similar. Now, I've got some other projects too. I'm still active in the affiliate space, and in fact, I'm kind of pushing into that. I don't know that I'm in a great position to give, advice on how to kind of manage, these things, other than, I kind of you have your thing that's, your main deal, and then you've got kind of your secondary things. And I think you need to keep your priorities and your time in alignment with that. And then I think the other thing is, and what I'm working on right now, is putting someone as sort of the head, for each piece, right? So I've got a guy that works for me, who I'm starting on this short-term rental journey with. The idea that he would then manage that, right? And then I've got a guy that runs our consulting for Vocational for our Amazon clients, and so kind of he's in charge with that. And so hopefully I'm progressing towards what's kind of been my vision for the last number of years, and then I've gotten sidetracked, which was this: when I sold Efricon, I sold the agency. That was all that I really had. So it was really weird, because there was one day where that was my last day, and then I didn't go in, to work the next day, and I checked my phone and there's like no emails on it. And I like thought the internet was like broken, and or whatever, the Russians must have been, invading or something. And it was like, well, no, I just didn't have anything going on. And it was such a foreign thing. Like, I always have too much email. So that was tricky for me. And then I remember thinking, the next time I'd like to have something else going on too. So if I sell the main thing, there's another thing going. And so that's kind of been my plan, just where my interest is. I have several different, things I'm interested in. They're all at various stages of growth. And so my goal is, can we share some resources across them, because they're similar, so it's the same people doing the marketing for our own brands as it is, for the clients. In fact, kind of like we were talking about earlier with SEO, where I could say, hey, you should hire us to do SEO because, we've already proven it to you. Like, that's how you found us. Same thing here. I don't push hard to sell, clients for the Amazon services. I'm like, look, we practice what we preach. In fact, we do more volume with our own products than we do on the consulting side. So, we're going to do the same thing for you that we do for ourselves,
It's interesting. I'm envious a little bit in that I'm sort of ADD in terms of lots of ideas, lots of potential, ventures. When I was active in the day-to-day with Blue Corona, I'm starting to realize that I had a bazillion ideas, and I had probably, 100 people sitting there where I could say, hey, come into the conference room and let me present, let me pitch you this, get them excited about it, and have them kind of run, a little bit with it, with me kind of stepping in where I felt like it. And most of them were just, complete waste of company resources, but it kind of felt like, oh, they're mostly my resources. So what do I, it's my prerogative. But now that I'm not in the day to day, I have all these different ideas, but everything feels like way too much work. For me. So when I hear some of the things that you're doing, I'm on the one hand thinking like, gosh, just need to do some stuff and kind of get the wheel rolling. And then the other part of me is like, I still don't like emails. I hate, the text message at 7 p.m. saying, hey, can we fill in the blank? I just did it for so many years that it's like, I really like just sitting with a book on the front porch reading.
So just a couple of thoughts of that. So one thing for me, the biggest difference between, I've sold services, I've sold products, right? And in fact, if I go down the whole thing, like what can you sell, right? Everything's either a product, it's a service. Maybe you could say real estate. Real estate in a way is kind of like a product, but product, service, real estate, and businesses. And so I used to think, okay, I sell services or I sell products. And now I'm almost in the mindset, I sell businesses that sell services, or I sell businesses that sell products or brands or whatever. So one of the biggest differences is what I was saying a second ago between the service business and the product business. So for me, it was my SEO agency versus selling our widgets on Amazon. I got a lot of email in both cases, but I had to reply to the email on the service side. Because at the end of the day, and this is something I'd be interested in where you fall on this, but I used to tell my team in the SEO space, I'm like, yes, we're selling SEO, but far more important than that is the client service element of it, right? Like, if we do a bad job of SEO, okay, we'll be fired in 6 months. If we do a bad job of communicating with the client, we'll be fired next week, you know? And if we do a bad job of communicating with a client and we're fired next week, then we don't have the time to succeed in the SEO.
Right.
So the client service was actually more important because it relates into your actual ability to deliver the service, right? Also, the client's more confident on that. So what that all means is that I felt like I had to be replying to emails quickly. I had to be answering questions. Clients paying us, a bunch of money per month. In a lot of cases, I pretty much sold all the clients myself. So, a lot of them, I had a kind of this responsibility to them. Really cool thing about selling a $15 shoehorn is you don't have like dramatic emails and stuff.
Right.
You don't have this thing of like, oh, my, VP of finance is, running an assessment on the campaign and I need to understand all this. No. Like the worst case you get is somebody's like, I don't like the shoehorn, to which we're like, click, and it says, okay, oh, I'm so sorry. Here's a refund,
Yeah.
Sorry.
I didn't think about that. I mean, I think the person
I think dictates that pull,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the person I'm most envious of, maybe envy is the wrong word, but as I think about sort of where I'd like to take things, the guys over at I think they're kind of holding companies called Tiny. We talk about this.
Oh, yeah. Andrew, somebody or other, right? I think
I can't remember his last name. Canadian guy. I found him through Shane Parrish's, podcast, another Canadian guy.
Wilkerson, Andrew Wilkerson, maybe something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but it's like he, again, I think he has explicitly said, he's tried to create like a mini Berkshire Hathaway where they have all these different companies that they own.
Yeah.
And, they're on the board and, can chime in, if an entrepreneur wants an ear about fill in the blank, like I love hopping on a call, and spend an hour talking about digital marketing or culture, turnover, something where I feel like I can add value, and it's through kind of storytelling as opposed to some sort of like academic, lecture. And again, I'd like to invest in things and people that were the equivalent of me, in my, 15 years ago. But I can't envision I see in that office and I just think I sort of miss having like a sanctuary of the office, but I just can't do it. I can't drive anywhere and I'm in shorts right now. I've been wearing shorts for 3 years.
Yeah. So, just so you don't feel too bad for me, I am 0.9 miles from my house. You're
not making the hellish Fort Mill to Charlotte commute.
No. I kid you not. I've literally we counted it the other day. I've had something like, it was right about 10 offices within a mile and a half of my house here within the last 15 years.
That's awesome.
So between the different businesses, and so you can see when I had the agency, we would add 2 people and I'd be like, oh no, we're out of space. And I'd get a slightly bigger office. And I did that about 6 or 7 times before I learned a lesson that it's better to pay a little bit more for a bigger space than to pay 2 leases at the same time. So, no. So, I mean, I hear you. I look, if I don't have the discipline, honestly, to work from home. I got 3 kids, it's loud when they're home. And I just, frankly, I would play video games on the Xbox and stuff. For me, coming in here it's a mindset thing.
Yeah.
So it's all by, by choice. Obviously I tried, when it was COVID, I was working from home and all that. That was hard for me.
Yeah.
So but I mean, what those guys are doing, with the mini Berkshire Hathaway. In fact, there's a guy in Charlotte who's doing it with basically product brands. Elements Brands is the company name. Bill D'Alessandro is the guy's name. Go look him up, listen to some podcasts or YouTubes or whatever he's on. Really smart business guy. In fact, reminds me a lot of you, Ben.
Mm.
And just really, really sharp guy. And so yeah, same kind of deal. And I think if you can get some efficiencies or some shared resources between, the different companies, I think it makes a lot of sense. And so, you could have, like, let's say, a developer or whatever, and maybe, any one of these three companies doesn't need a full-time web developer,
Right.
but, maybe could they share a guy? Yeah. And so
Right.
for me, Vocational is kind of like the holding, kind of company that kind of runs all of that. But yeah, I mean, that's my interest. I've not yet gotten to a point where I'm quite at that level where I'm sort of sitting on the board and advising. I'm still sort of, honestly, I kind of like to start them up and get them going.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's what I would like to do, is to kind of turn it over, take a step back, and then just sort of advise. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. And again, I think our, probably the target audience at least are home service business owners, but I always got a lot. I mean, we weren't always so hyper focused on home services. We got there pretty quickly, but I still like to look at all the different industries and again, spend quite a bit of time looking at things like Amazon because it's just, there's so much that you pick up, ancillarily that can then be applied to, to your industry and business.
It's mind-boggling to me how similar they are, really. I mean, it's just amazing. And I mean, even from the standpoint of like the tools. In fact, I kind of was out of the SEO space for a little bit, and we have a couple of affiliate sites. I don't do much with them. And then I started getting back into it. And all the while I had like a subscription to Ahrefs. And then I started taking a look at it, I'm like, this is amazing. Like, this thing is unbelievable. I don't know if you're an Ahrefs guy or an SEMrush guy, and I haven't seen SEMrush in many, many years, but Ahrefs is amazing.
Yeah.
And so I've seen the same industry evolution in the Amazon space where, like, okay, at first there aren't any tools, so you have to do everything manually, right? And so it's like way harder, but at the same point, because it's harder for you, it's harder for everybody else.
Yeah.
And so if you're willing to do it and you can figure out how to do it, there's great opportunity there. And then, then the tools come along and they're kind of like, okay, and a little wonky or whatever, and they're helpful, but not really. And then eventually they get like really, really good. And then as they get really, really good, the problem is they're also really, really good for everyone else. And so, the competition and the bars.
It's funny when you were first mentioning like how, your understanding of how some of those tools work, where they're looking at the markets and kind of looking at the page every day. I remember years and years and years ago, like probably 2007 or 6, I became aware of this company where they literally had a staff of people that would go around to all the local hotels that hosted business conferences. And they would look at the placard, that said like, today, the National fill in the blank Accountants Association of Montgomery County, Maryland is going to be at the Marriott Rio. And they would just publish a list and you would buy a subscription to this list. And I guess then the idea is that if you're someone who sells to fill in the blank accountants in Montgomery County, Maryland, you basically just go and drop in on the conference. And I remember the company, it was like, I remember thinking like, there is no way there's a company where they have people just driving around the hotels every single day and taking pictures of the placard. But 100% that was their business. And you can imagine it was like, now there's probably like an API that you can tap into, conference booking and you get it all.
But once that comes out, the competition is stepped up.
Yeah, exactly.
I got to tell you this one last thing here. So this is the thing that made the Amazon business real for me. So I'm like, I don't know, this all sounds neat and stuff, but how do I really know what a product's going to do or whatever? And the guy I was meeting with, he tells me, he's like, hey, here's what you should do. Find a product, okay, whatever, and go home tonight and go onto Amazon, add it to your cart, right? When you're in your cart, tell it you want to buy 999 of them. Why? Well, because they won't let you buy 1,000 of anything. That's the most you can buy, right? So you tell it you want to buy 999. Here's the deal. If they have that many or more, it'll let you buy it. Obviously, don't buy it, right? But if they have less, it's going to say, I'm sorry, This seller only has 871 of these. Come
Wow.
back tomorrow, do it again.
Wow.
Sorry, the seller only has 860 of these. Come back the
Literally
next.
can just sit and watch how much they're selling.
Ben, for about a month, I had a spreadsheet of all these different products. And every day I would go on and I would do this and I would add them. I mean, this is after, I mean, I just, had a 7-figure agency. I just saw I'm up at 2 a.m. I'm logging the stuff in the spreadsheet or whatever, trying to figure out how many widgets all these different guys are selling. And that made it real for me because I could see, like, I knew, like, factually, these other guys were doing, this. And so if they're doing this with that, I can improve it, right? And so I think the same thing can kind of apply for me. It's like, that's just like the little hack. Now, eventually they came out with tools that do this. So I don't do that anymore, right? We have tools and they tell us. But it was a real thing that I could do, and it was pre-tool. So I was able to get a little bit of a jump, and build up that advantage. And so again, there's the same thing as in the Airbnb space. And the same thing, even honestly, in SEO. Shoot, my favorite, SEO tactic is like, forget what you or I think. Like, who's ranking for this thing?
Yeah.
Put them into Ahrefs. Who's linking to them?
Yeah.
What pages have they written? How do they rank for those different keywords? I mean, like, the answer is right there with both Google and Amazon and any platform to this extent.
So, isn't it amazing?
Public.
It's like when I remember watching The Big Short, the movie The Big Short, and it just all kind of reminds me of, it's amazing how many people go through their daily lives in business, etc., and they never go and actually check. They never go and look. Whereas, in the movie, Christian Bale's like literally going through every single mortgage in those, jumbled together things and going like, oh my gosh, this is a big, kind of house of cards. But, it's like anyone could have done it. But, it takes a certain amount of like curiosity and obsessive compulsive,
And sometimes you need the nugget too. So I didn't think of the nugget to add 999 to the cart and then, go back.
That person sounds like
I didn't think of it, but somebody did. And it's not that, ingenious or whatever. Like, I probably could have thought of it or whatever, but whatever. I had a connection and I had a person give me the right nugget. And that was the thing that I needed to then go with it,
Yeah.
And so I think that that's honestly like just a way in general, I think that's a thing for business in general. Like, there's a lot of people that are like, oh, I want to start this business. I have this idea. I want to do this thing or whatever. You need some sort of thing to kind of push you over the initial little edge, I think there's a lot of different, ways to go about that, but you got to find that little nugget. And a lot of times it comes from someone who's just a little bit further down the road than you are.
I think that's a fantastic place to end because that's so, so true.
Yeah.
John,
Awesome.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.